with our colorful vegetable presentation. Um, and this is one of those topics that I love talking about. Colorful vegetables are one of the things that I actually started out doing first in my gardening career. I worked with youth to teach them in a community garden, and one of the things that we tried was to grow colorful and unusual produce that you might not be able to find in the supermarket, but also allow children and participants to grow their favorite color. And we found out that when you incorporate those unique colors or give people the ability to grow um, their favorite color, they're more apt to try it as well as being drawn in to gardening as it gives them that personal connection there. So, today's outline, we are going to talk about where these colors come from, what naturally in the fruit or the vegetable produces these colors, and then we're going to spend the rest of today talking about um, 5 crops that are um, good to grow, easy to grow, and um, we'll talk about some specific cultivars and how they differ. Um, so we'll go ahead and get started. And so one of the first things I do want to um, say is that this is a modified presentation from one that was conducted a few years ago by Diana Plua from the University of Illinois. Her presentation was called Elementals. And so that is the basis for today's presentation, as well as modifying and adding my own flair. So I do want to thank Diane for that. And where do these colors come from? So these colors are naturally developed within the plant through pigmented phytochemicals. And so that's a big phrase for some of the common phytochemicals or nutrients that we are used to hearing about from our produce. Um, when we look at the list on the board or on the screen here, anthocyanins, betalains, carotenoids, chlorophyll, and anthoxidants, all of these are things that we have heard um, in food discussions that we've had. And so these can be an overexpression of these pigments that gives us that color, or in some cases, where we think about um, asparagus or um, eggplant, this is going to be a lack of chlorophyll, which allows those phytochemicals to actually show and express themselves. Another thing that happens as the fruit ripens, such as with tomatoes and bell peppers, is they're green when they first start out, but as they start to mature and develop, that chloroplast or that chlorophyll is actually degrading and allowing those other phytochemicals or phytonutrients to be expressed. So when we look at the color spectrum as a whole, as a rainbow, there are many vegetables that can experience or express all different kinds of colors. Um, when we look at peppers, as I was mentioning, with that chlorophyll breaking down during ripening, the carotenoids begin to accumulate, expressing a different color. With the carrots, we're starting to see um, more lycopene providing a red coloration, xanthophylls for a yellow, anthocyanins as purple, and all of these different phytochemicals or phytonutrients can provide that great rainbow of color that we see for the vegetables that we grow or that we buy in the supermarket. One thing I do want to point out is the yellow watermelon down here. This one is actually missing the lycopene in the flesh. And so without that lycopene, then the xanthophylls that are present at the same time are expressed. So when we break this down even further into the individual colors, we do have some overlap between the phytonutrients that are providing the color, as well as the level of them that gives the distinct shade or color that we see with a lot of our fruits and vegetables. So lycopene is the one that most of us are always familiar with. I think to myself, when I hear lycopene, it's been connected to ketchup for the tomatoes. And this lycopene increases as the fruit ripens. So it starts off with having very little, but as that tomato reaches maturity, then that lycopene content increases and the chlorophyll decreases towards ripening. So that's why we see the mixed green-red color as it ripens, eventually fading to the full red color that we see. Cherries, lettuces are also pictured on the screen here. And one thing to mention about lycopene before I move on, lycopene is in cherries and lettuce. But that red color brightens more when they're cooked. So the lycopene is actually intensified through cooking. So that's why you sometimes see a brighter color when you cook tomatoes to make tomato sauce. The other phytonutrient that is present is a group called betalains. And betalains is actually a group of chemicals, phytochemicals, that are present. So those would be beta-cyanins and beta-xanthins. And one of the things that, because people hear the cyanins, they're not related to the anthocyanins or the anthoxanthins. So they're actually two different groups of phytonutrients. Orange. Orange is probably one of the ones that most of us are familiar with, especially because of beta carotene. So beta carotene is also known as vitamin A, and this is found in a lot of our leafy green vegetables, but what the reason we don't see a lot of those leafy green vegetables as orange is because the chlorophyll is masking that orange color. So most familiar, beta carotene, carrots, But when we start looking at other vegetables, we've got sweet potatoes, yellow watermelon, as well as the cheddar broccoli that is pictured up at the top. The other phyto nutrient that is present to cause more of the orange, or more of the yellow, excuse me, is going to be xanthophylls. And so these are a type of carotenoid as well, but this is just a different group that includes lutein, which is one that you may have heard when talking about nutrition. Green, this one is going to be the most familiar phytonutrient, as green is characteristic of the photosynthesizing chlorophyll. So we're going to see a lot more of the green as the vegetables are maturing, as it's going to be, that chlorophyll is going to be used for photosynthesis. All of the plants, leaves, and stems are going to have an abundance of chlorophyll. When it gets into the part of the plant that we eat, it's as it matures, it will start degrading the chlorophyll during the process, or not producing chlorophyll in those fruits or vegetables. And that's when we start seeing those color changes. So for the vegetables that we eat that are green, they are going to have higher levels of chloroplast and chlorophyll in them. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to have those other phytonutrients in there. It's that they're being masked by the chlorophyll. And so a couple of examples that are on the screen here are green beans, lettuce, green tomatoes, and then Romanesco broccoli. Blue and purple. So this is the category that a lot of folks are interested for growing their vegetables, because who doesn't want to grow a purple vegetable? It's one of those most sought after colors that people like. And for this one, blue and purple go hand in hand because it's the same phytonutrient in anthocyanins. So we've heard a lot about anthocyanins concerning food with different antioxidants and phytonutrients. One of the things that is a little disappointing when growing purple or blue vegetables is that anthocyanins are water soluble. So that means when you cook these vegetables, they are going to lose that color as they're cooked. One of the um, purple vegetables that I grow in my personal garden and our children's gardens is going to be the purple beans. Purple beans are a great thing because there are a lot of them and they're easy to be picked. But when you cook the green beans by either microwaving them, steaming them, or boiling them, when they are cooked and that water is heated, that those anthocyanins actually leach out of the the vegetable, and the vegetable turns to green. So if you've ever heard of using more of the purple types of vegetables in cooking shows as raw or fresh consumption, that is why. Um, the shade of the blue or purple vegetable actually depends on the pH. So if you get a red, a blue, or a purple, it's going to depend on the pH of that particular fruit or vegetable for that color to develop. White vegetables, this one is going to be the absence or the absence of the chlorophyll and the pigmented phytocolors. So when we look at the examples, we've got onions, pine berries, which is a white form of strawberry, asparagus, eggplant, and cauliflower. So all of these fruits and vegetables develop as they are blanched or go through the process of etiolation, which that process is not allowing sunlight to come in contact with the developing fruit or vegetable. And when there's no sunlight, that vegetable doesn't produce chlorophyll. And so for these varieties, they also don't produce any of the other pigmented phytochemicals. If they did, then without that chlorophyll, they would start developing as another color. All right. And so when we put all of these different vegetables and phytochemicals together, we get the rainbow of colors, which can be a great pull to get young people or picky eaters involved into gardening. So now that we've got a little bit of background about what causes these color changes, we're going to look at those individual crop families and talk about some of the cultivars that I found when doing some research that will work well in our Illinois climate, as well as um, have some of those flavors that we're looking for. So the first one that we are going to start with is the Santee broccoli. And this is a purple form of broccoli that develops for a late fall harvest. Um, you can't tell from the picture, but it does form the purple heads. But as you get further down the stem, it starts to turn that green color that we're used to. So as you go down the stem, it's going to be blue and or purple and green. It does, because of that water soluble property, it does turn green when it's cooked. Um, this particular cultivar does have a longer harvest period, as it's about 3 to 5 weeks. And does do well in that fall temperature as it sorry, I have to close out of the annotations and clear those out. All right. One thing that was noted in the notes for these for this cultivar was that it is encouraged to pinch the cultivar as it's developing to have a heavier side shoot production. One other thing to add is that it does mature um, rather quickly. Um, when you're doing transplanting, since you're growing the smaller forms, it's going to be about um, 20 days according to the seed packet for that transplant. When you're doing by transplant, it should be about 20 days. Our next cultivar to talk about is the Romanesco cultivar in the green at the top center. And this one, um, besides having a beautiful green chartreuse color, um, has an interesting texture for a broccoli. And that unique texture is one of the reasons why it's been sought after as a culinary additive. Um, Surprising note when I was doing my research on Romanesco broccoli, it's actually been consumed since the 16th century. Um, it is an Italian heirloom variety that was first documented back in that 16th century. Um, because many many preparers want to preserve that good unique texture for Romanesco, it's often served in raw, but it can be cooked lightly in order to preserve that texture. This one does have a date to maturity for our area for about 75 to 100 days, and they get about 36 inches tall and spread about 12 inches. All right. One of the ones that I have yet to grow, but I'm looking forward to trying it this year, is the cheddar variety. And so, cheddar is a bright orange head, and it holds its shape well in the field, um, and does well with a light cooking. For this one, it actually intensifies the flavor, or not the flavor, but the color of an orange, of the orange. And this one does well in a um, fertile soil that is um, well irrigated, and it needs to be irrigated regularly for good results. Um, it does it does struggle a bit before the intensity of the hot summer. So this is one that you want to plant early in the spring or plant um, later in for a fall or winter crop. If you're going to use this as a fall crop, you can either um, start seedlings in May, or you can transplant it in June or July for a harvest later in early fall. The only reported issues that I came across were that it does have some issues with flea beetles, or um, that it does fade out a little bit during those hot summer months. All right, and then the white sprouting broccoli. This is one that I didn't find um, a lot of information um, in the United States. I found a lot more information from the United Kingdom, as this is a popular type of broccoli that they have, and it's a little bit of a delicacy. Very similar to blanched asparagus or white asparagus. Um, with the white sprouting broccoli, this is you're gonna have the small white heads, very similar to the Santee type of broccoli that's purple, but this one is going to be white. And for this one, the heads, the stalks, and the leaves are all edible. And this variety um, produces less than what we would expect from another broccoli variety. Um, but it is going to be sweeter, and it's going to be more tender than the purple forms of broccoli. They're harvested early, usually in spring, and this one can also be planted again for a fall crop. Um, and a little bit of history about this is it was derived from a wild form that grew in the Mediterranean region, and then gradually spread throughout Europe. And it was after World War I when this really became more popular um, in the United States. So after World War I, a couple of brothers um, developed a variety, and then they introduced it into um, actually San Jose, California. Uh, all right. So let's go on to actually my favorite family, which is actually the carrot family. And when I was doing my research for new and unique varieties um, to put in here, I came across one that I absolutely want to try. And it's called the Black Nebula Carrot. And it is the picture that is right over here on the top left. And you can see why this carrot looks really cool. It's so purple that it is actually black looking because it's so filled with the phytonutrients for the anthocyanins. And so this one on the outside, when you dig it up, looks like it is black, but when you cut into it, the inside has that lightened center or core that we see with carrots, and it actually looks like a nebula that the Hubble telescope might have taken a picture of. Um, Another reason that I want to try this is it's only 75 days to maturity. So it's in that moderate range for carrot varieties. Um, and it was noted that it was had a good flavor, um, both delicious as raw and cooked. Um, When it is cooked, it does start to lose some of that intensity. Um, and one of the things that um, I've noticed just through my preparation of colored vegetables, when I'm doing a purple variety, I usually try to steam them so that there's less water in contact with those vegetables. But it's usually going to be a light steaming that I do so that it just keeps the color as much as possible. Um, I do always tell folks that if you are cooking with a particular purple vegetable for the first time, do a smaller batch because you don't want to be cooking um, a large batch of purple vegetables for the first time at a dinner party. The first time that I cooked purple beans, they didn't come out completely appealing because it was a mix of the purple and green color, so it was more resemblance of a brown. So it's something that you always have to try. Um, One thing that's also um, noteworthy about this um, is that because it is so intensified with that purple color, people will use the juice of this carrot as a clothing dye. Um, as I mentioned, it's 75 days to maturity. They do best in a full sun environment. And the soil temp for these, you're going to want to put them in about between 45 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. So for our purposes here in Illinois, when we plant our carrots, that falls within our range. And you're going to want to thin them to about 2 inches apart within the row, and that allows for the bigger carrot size to be developed. All right. Lunar White is the next carrot variety, and this one is going to be a 65-day to maturity cultivar. And for this one, this doesn't develop those other phytochemicals or phytonutrients that we had talked about earlier. So this is one of the cultivars that when it is planted under the soil, it's not going to develop that color. Now, you can see in the picture that, and this is where I'm going to try my annotations. You can see in the picture here on these carrots, above the line, that is where they were exposed to sunlight. So when they were exposed to sunlight, they started to develop chlorophyll. As the rest of the carrot was underground, it kept its white color. Now, on these carrots, it's perfectly okay to eat the whole carrot. Um, with some of our vegetables, I know that can be a concern, especially with potatoes. But in this case, the carrots are going to be fine whether they're green or white. Um, and one thing that was noted about this particular variety is it actually doesn't have that core that we're used to. So if we look at the atomic red here, we can see right there in the center it's got that core. And on the lunar white carrot, it actually doesn't develop that harder core, so it gives it a more milder carrot flavor. Um, this one was recommended as a springtime planting for carrot. Um, and planted through direct seed. The purple haze carrot, this is one that more people are familiar with. It's one of the more popular varieties or widely available types of carrot. And this one has a purpled skin, but then on the inside, it has that orange traditional color of the carrot that we're used to. And purple haze is the carrot that I actually discovered the power of the purple carrot with during my project with the youth in the community garden. They were so excited to see that purple carrot that they weren't used to seeing because carrots are orange. And so when we had them do the taste test for them, they were they were pleasantly surprised that the orange core was still there. A couple of the kids had asked if we had painted the carrot, which we didn't because they harvested them directly out of the ground. But it was one of those unique experiences for me where it was something that I was familiar with, but they were learning it for the first time. This is a past All America Selections winner. Um, it it gets about 8 to 10 inches long and is a 90-day carrot. So this one is one of those carrots that's going to take a little bit longer than the previous two that we've talked about. And these need to be spaced about 12 inches apart. Um, they do have a spread associated with them. Harvest time, depending on planting, is going to be July through December. So this is one that you could succession plant or do another round of planting. Um, and it's a quick germinating carrot with about 10 days from planting before you start seeing the carrot tops appear. The next carrot that we've got is the atomic red carrot. Um, and this was one that I had to put in here because it actually is one of the vegetables that we can, if we harvest it right, will actually be pink in color. So atomic red, as the carrot develops, it's increasing in that lycopene. And if we get it just at the right stage, it's going to look pinkish, which I thought was very cool. Um, then, when you cook that carrot, it's actually going to intensify that flavor or that color. And so those lighter colored carrots are going to turn closer to the scarlet color that you see pictured here. This carrot is going to be one of our middle day maturing carrots. It's going to take about 75 days, and the carrots themselves get between 8 to 11 inches. They do prefer a cooler season, so planting them um, either spring about frost time or before frost time, and then um, planting them early fall for that later fall harvest. Um, One of the things that I always tell people is if you can, always do a fall planting of carrots because once we get to those cooler temperatures about harvest time, those sugars in the carrots actually get more intensified, so you end up with a sweeter form of carrot. Um, And carrots can handle that first light frost that we have, so that will also help increase that flavor profile as well. All right, and then our last carrot that we've got is going to be the solar yellow carrot. And so these um, are a cultivar that comes from the Middle East. Um, and they were actually one that was recorded in southern Europe in the 14th century. So this, when putting this presentation together, one of the things that I noticed were a lot of these vegetables that seemed new to me had been grown for quite a while. Um, these are yellow carrots that um, have a sugar content that is slightly sweeter than the orange carrots, and um, they do retain their color when they're cooked. Since the yellow color isn't water soluble, it stays in there. It was noted for fresh consumption as well as cooking. Um, and the yellow on the screen, depending on your screen color, looks like on mine right now. I have two screens, and one it's kind of yellow, the other one it's kind of orange, but it's actually a butter yellow color for that carrot. And it is a Danvers shaped carrot, so it's going to be one of those thick at the top, thinning towards the bottom. They get about 6 to 7 inches and take 65 to 70 days to mature. All right. Cucumbers are our next variety or our next crop. And this first cucumber is one that really threw me for a loop. As you can see on the screen, the Puna Kira cucumber is a cucumber that is green while it's growing, but it matures into something that looks like a russet potato. And so it is a smooth, white skinned cucumber that matures to a russet brown color. And you can see in the slices here that it does look like um, a white potato skin around the seed chamber. Um, this variety originates from Pune, India, hence the name, and it is one of the unusual types of cucumbers that are in the cucumber family. Um, it does go through quite the color change. It goes from white to golden yellow to a little bit of green to the russet color. And it can be eaten at any stage, so you don't have to wait until it gets to that russet color. But it is a 55-day potato, which is a quick potato. And one thing that I like about what I've read for this variety is it has a hardy disease resistance built into those vines, especially for an earlier seasoned potato. Um, it is noted that just like other cucumbers, it does have the spines or the thorns. So if you look at the lemon cucumber here, you can kind of see the black thorns. On the Punakira, it does have those thorns, so you do want to give it a good washing and brushing. Um, and when I was looking through the seed categories, or the seed catalogs, excuse me, one of the things caught my eye, is that there's a grower here in Illinois who is growing them, um, that's having good luck with them. Um, and one thing that they did note is that it's a very prolific type of cucumber. Lemon cucumbers, this is one that's gaining some recognizability in the um, garden center. Um, I've grown this for 4 years now, but I still have people asking me, what are those lemons you're growing in your garden? We put this in one of our donation gardens this past year, and when it got to the food pantry, it it was one of those teachable moments that we were teaching that these are actually cucumbers. So it's just a different variety. It's got a little bit different shape and flavor to them, but they're still the cucumbers that you know. But it was one of those teachable moments because it was a variety that not many people had come in contact with. These, instead of being elongated, they'll be about tennis ball shaped and round, and take 65 days to mature. Um, Again, a variety that has been around for a while. This was introduced to the United States back in the late 1800s. Um, and it's only named for the color. It doesn't have that lemon flavor that people would expect. So 65 days to maturity, and the vines space out to about 60 inches. The next variety is the Armenian cucumber. And this is an heirloom cucumber that takes 55 days to mature. And they're more of a mild tasting cucumber versus a slicing or a pickling cucumber. They are great for both slicing and pickling. And they have another common name associated with them. You may have heard of snake melon. So it's the common name that has been associated with them. Um, Even though they are a cucumber, they are related to muskmelon. And so this type of cucumber does have a slight cantaloupe-like aroma to them when they are sliced. They can get up to a couple of feet long. They're great for a trellis, and you usually want to harvest them when they're about 12 to 18 inches long. If you do grow them on a trellis, they will be straighter because of gravity. But if you grow them on the ground, they start to get the crooked shape that you can see here in the picture. And as we're running low on time, I want to get to our tomatoes. And these varieties are just a couple that I picked when I was going through the seed catalog, as they're varieties that um, either are new, interesting, or indifferent. So the white cherry tomatoes, the pink Thai, and the brown berry were all varieties that I were new to me. The big rainbow and the green zebra were two varieties that um, I had seen locally before. The green zebra is an unusual one. There's a certain football team that people will grow this for their gardens. because it is a green fruit that turns a yellow color. Um, the big rainbow actually goes from yellow, orange to red, and has kind of that striped or half appearance between yellow and red. So if any of you are college fans from Iowa, that can be a great addition to that type of garden. The pink tie, that was one that I am looking forward to trying to see if the color is actually as pink as they say it is. It is an indeterminate type of tomato, but the pink color that is on your screen is the pink color that the fruits are supposed to be. Um, they originate from Thailand, and have become a popular addition for a lot of fresh salads. They take 65 days to mature, um, and there were no disease or insect issues associated with them that I could find looking at the catalog. The peppers, these are a wide array of colors that I found when I was looking for. And so one of the things that I was really trying to do with this presentation is get at least one different color represented. So all the different colors, but try and really get a good mix of those colors. And probably my favorite color scheme that was put together is for this mixed cayenne, also known as a Carnival cayenne pepper blend. And it is reminiscent of the Mardi Gras colors, which is where it gets its name. Um, and for these, they get about 2 feet tall. They take 75 days to mature. And it's one of those peppers that can add a unique flair to a dish. Um, so one of the things that I noted is that when you dehydrate these, they do keep their color. So if anybody's into making their own cayenne pepper, this is one where you can have those unique colors for their cayenne pepper. And then just one on here that I'm going to mention about because it's become a staple to my garden is going to be, as well as it's fun to say, the Yum Yums Hybrid Mixed Mini Bell Sweet Pepper. And this is one where the sweet bell peppers, the snack ones that you would find in the grocery store, are available for you to grow in your own yard. So, because they are smaller and they only get a couple of inches long when you grow them, they are nearly seedless. So they get at most to about 2.5 inches in length. And they're a mix of tangerine, yellow, green, and red. So they're perfect for snacking, stuffing, kebabbing, or eating fresh. 55 days to maturity, so they are one of those quicker varieties, and that's when you plant them from transplants. So I know I went a little bit fast with the peppers and the tomatoes, but I did want to make sure that we got through everything. And for those of you that are looking at the peppers on the screen, I am sad to report that the sweet chocolate pepper does not taste like chocolate. It gets its name from the fact that the color that it has resembles um, melted chocolate. And one thing that I just have to mention, because I found it interesting, was this was actually a variety that was developed in the United States through an extension experiment station. So just interesting. You never know where these varieties are going to come from. Um, so with that, for review, we did talk about where the colors came from, as well as some examples of colorful crops that you can look forward to implementing in your gardens for the upcoming growing season. And again, I do just want to um, thank Diane and Leah for allowing me the use of their previous Four Seasons webinar to spice up for today's presentation. Um, and then these are not recommendations, but these are some of the seed catalogs that I looked at while I was putting together today's presentation. And if you're not able to find these locally or at your local garden centers, this might be a place or a couple of places that you can reach out to. All right. And then um, here's my contact information if anybody has questions following up today's presentation.